In the eerie silence of rural Ireland, countless children were once believed to have been taken by fairies and replaced with changelings. Imagine waking up to find your beloved child has been replaced by a creature from the otherworld. How would you know? What would you do? The legend of the changeling is one of the most haunting tales in Irish mythology. Rooted in the deep mystical beliefs of ancient Ireland, this legend reflects the fears and anxieties of parents who lived in a world where the line between reality and the supernatural was often blurred. Changelings were thought to be fairy children left in place of human infants, a sinister switch that could bring misfortune and despair to any household. These stories were not just idle tales, they were warnings, deeply intertwined with the social fabric of the time, reflecting the uncertainties of parenthood and the ever-present fear that the otherworld might reach out and touch the lives of the living. In a time before modern medicine and psychology, families often faced situations where a child would suddenly change, becoming withdrawn, ill-tempered, or displaying behaviors that were difficult to understand. In the absence of scientific explanations, these changes were often attributed to the child being a changeling, a fairy imposter left in place of their real child. The idea of the changeling provided a way for communities to make sense of unexplained illnesses, developmental disorders, or even sudden changes in personality. But the consequences of these beliefs could be dire, leading to tragic outcomes for those suspected of being changelings. The stigma and fear surrounding changelings created a social challenge, where families might hide their suspicions out of shame, or worse, take drastic measures to rid themselves of the fairy child in hopes of getting their true child back. The legend of the changeling is not unique to Ireland. Similar tales can be found across Europe, each culture adding its own twist to the story. In Ireland, however, these legends took on a particularly dark and ominous tone. The changeling was not just a troublesome fairy child. It was often depicted as a malevolent being that could bring ruin to an entire household. In some stories, the changeling would bring misfortune or illness, while in others, it would display supernatural abilities, making it clear to all that it was not of this world. These tales served as a way to explain the unexplainable, offering a narrative to make sense of the fear and confusion surrounding childhood illnesses and developmental changes. Many changeling stories involve a desperate quest to retrieve the stolen child, often requiring the family to confront the fairies themselves or undertake dangerous rituals. These stories were more than just warnings. They were also lessons in the fragility of life and the importance of community in times of crisis. One of the most chilling changeling stories comes from the remote village of Bodach in County Cork. It tells of a young mother named Eileen, whose baby boy, Sean, was known for his bright, cheerful demeanor. But one fateful night, during a fierce storm, something changed. The next morning, Sean was no longer the same. Eileen noticed that her once lively child had grown eerily silent, his skin cold to the touch, his eyes dark and lifeless. Desperate, she sought help from the village elder, a woman known for her knowledge of the old ways. The elder warned Eileen that her child had been taken by the fairies and that the baby in her arms was a changeling. Determined to get her real child back, Eileen followed the elder's instructions, preparing a fire and placing the changeling close to the flames. As the heat intensified, the baby began to scream, but it was not the cry of a human child. It was a high-pitched wail, unnatural and filled with rage. In that moment, the changeling's true form was revealed, a twisted, malevolent creature with eyes that burned like embers. With a final, blood-curdling scream, it vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving Eileen alone, clutching nothing but air. Eileen, heartbroken and terrified, ran into the forest, calling out for her baby. She wandered for hours, but the storm had left the woods dark and treacherous. Just when all hope seemed lost, she heard a faint cry coming from a nearby fairy ring. There, lying on the ground, was her son, Sean, safe and unharmed. The fairies had returned him, but the price had been steep. Eileen would never forget the horror of the night she confronted the changeling. The legend of the changeling is a powerful reflection of the fears and uncertainties that have plagued parents for centuries. These stories, though rooted in folklore, reveal the deep anxieties surrounding childhood and the unknown forces that can influence our lives. While the belief in changelings may have faded over time, the impact of these legends continues to echo in modern culture. They remind us of the thin veil that separates the known from the unknown, and the lengths to which we will go to protect those we love. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the haunting legend of the changeling. What are your thoughts on this eerie tale? Have you heard similar stories in your culture? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore our other videos on folklore and myth. Stay curious and remember, sometimes the stories we tell are closer to the truth than we think.